but not micromanaging is important, because when you, especially if you're micromanaging high performers, that is one of the biggest demotivators for a high performer, because they know their job, they like their job, they're excited about it, they know that they do it well. But to have somebody that's constantly micromanaging them, that actually hurts a high performing employee. Save the micromanaging for those employees that are not performing well.
You're listening to the Black to Business Podcast, an educational podcast providing Black entrepreneurs with the tools and resources to start and grow their businesses. We chat with vetted Black entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and business owners as they provide tips and resources to help take your business to the next level. I'm your host, Monique T. Marshall. Hey, and welcome back to another episode of the Black to Business Podcast. I'm your host, Monique T. Marshall, and today's conversation is one that you definitely do not want to miss, especially if you're thinking about the future of your business. Here's the truth. No matter how great your product or service is, your business will not grow without the right team behind it. Having a high-performing team is what takes businesses from surviving to thriving. But how do you build a team that's truly aligned with your vision and driven to perform at their best? Today, I'm so excited to be joined by Lakeisha Robichaux, CEO and founder of Chief of Minds, who knows exactly what it takes to develop and lead a successful team. With over 21 years of experience in organizational development and human resources, Lakeisha has worked with Fortune 100 and 500 companies, helping them build high-performing teams that deliver results. She's here to break down how you can do the same regardless of your industry or where you are in your business journey. In this episode, we're diving into the strategies that will help you attract the right talent, create a shared vision, foster accountability, and ultimately build a team that drives your business forward. Even if you don't have a team yet, this episode is packed with advice that will prepare you to lead with confidence when that time comes. So let's get into it. Lakeisha, welcome to the Black to Business Podcast. Great to have you here. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It is my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. I am happy to be here with you.
Yes, we are definitely excited to have you and in for a treat, because I am excited to talk about this topic also. And it's something we haven't discussed on the Black to Business Podcast, and that is how to build a high performing team. Now, you are the GOAT when it comes to HR. So before we dive into the topic, I want to let people know a little bit about your story and your journey. So if you could just share a little bit about who you are, what is it that you do in your business, and kind of how you got here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much. So I am Lakeisha Robichaux. I am from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I am a mother to two handsome boys, a wife, the founder and CEO of Chief of Minds. Chief of Minds, which is an organizational development firm where we provide organizational development and human resources services for businesses. I am from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and I really got here through way of my career. So before I founded Chief of Minds, I actually I've worked for several Fortune 100 and 500 companies such as Dollar General, CVS Pharmacy, Loyola University, where I worked in roles in human resources. So leading and advising executives on HR practices, whether that was from talent acquisition to employee relations, you name it, I dealt with it. And so after when I was working for one of my previous employers, I saw the need and the want really for outsourced HR. I was working in an executive director role, and with the Recovery School District and the charter schools, we were over recruiting the charter schools. And so the executives of the charter schools were coming to me and they were like, listen, we would love for you to either run the charter school or run, operations or HR. And so I saw that demand and need for it. And so I was like, well, you know what? Instead of hiring me as an employee, why don't you hire, me, a company, and we'll do it that way. And it was like, hey, whatever way it works, as long as we can, do business together, then that works. And so Chief of Minds was born from there. And we've grown since then. Actually, this is our 10th year anniversary. Wow. This month. We will celebrate 10 years in business. So I am.
Wow. Congratulations. That is a big deal because as you know, most don't make. Yeah. Congratulations. So we definitely got to circle back on that journey. And so I love that, and such a phenomenal story, and just getting into, so being in the industry for 10 years, in business for 10 years, I want to start with the basics for those who are listening and really getting to understanding what a high performing team is. So Lakeisha, if you were to say, what does it mean to have a high performing team? And also, why is this so critical for business success?
So it is really critical for business success because high performing teams really, they work well together. They are able to collaborate with one another. They produce effective results or deliverables, whatever the goal is of that particular organization. They understand the vision that has been set out. And so when they do that, then you can produce things that you know that are successful for the organization. And so they're different, I would say, characteristics, things like that contribute to a high performing team. But ultimately, that's what it is. They can work together, produce effective results, and really share the vision of that organization.
That is so good. So somebody is listening, and exactly what you're saying is like, what does those characteristics look like for an entrepreneur so that they can be aware of these things?
So going back to, sharing and really understanding the vision, that is first and foremost to really understand what is the vision of the organization, to set out clear goals. That is so important because if you don't understand what you're trying to achieve, then everybody's basically throwing spaghetti up against the wall to say, hey, let's just, get what we said we're going to provide to our client and customers. So having and understanding clear goals and a vision, really communicate. Like there has to be open and clear communication inside of organizations. And I know the word transparent is used a lot. Oftentimes, I think it's thrown around a lot. But I'm just going to be honest. You need clear communication. Will there be transparent communication? All the time. Yes, try to be as transparent as possible. It just depends on what the activity, what the events are, to try to be as transparent as possible. But that is definitely important because when you have a high performing team and you're transparent about or open about what is going on, what the needs are, and what you're trying to achieve, you get a lot of buy-in from your team. And so communication is important, and effective communication is really, really important. Having trust, establishing trust, because your team has to trust you and you have to trust your team. But, first and foremost, coming in so that way they can really understand what is desired from them, and you're giving that support and the resources to them. And I'm saying we, meaning the entrepreneur, the business owner, the CEO of the organization, that's when you're establishing a trust. So that way they know that, hey, I have your support. You have my back, with what's going on. And then in return, they trust you and you get that support as well. So that's important. I would definitely say accountability is important because oftentimes we confuse responsibility and accountability. And we know that, in a high performing team, there are responsibilities. You're going to give out, responsibilities, the task and things like that. But accountability is that outcome. The outcome of the responsibility that you've given them. So who is going to be responsible for the outcomes that we're giving you? And so when that's clear, and that ties back to your goals, when that is clear, then you can really have a high performing team. So, those are some of the characteristics that I say that are, very important in creating or forming a high performing team.
Yeah, I am so glad you mentioned that, because even I think about like early days of Black to Business versus now, and I could just tell the difference when as team working with different people, what the difference it made was communicating those goals and really taking that time to create like our onboarding and letting people know where we are. So glad that you mentioned that. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And so how can business owners assess whether their team is performing at their highest potential?
So one, having some key performance indicators, is important. So your KPIs to really understand or really be able to track, honestly, what are the results? Are you achieving the goals that you set out? What does it look like? What does customer success look like? And so you have to track it and be able to identify to know, hey, are we working like we're supposed to and reaching that potential that we want? So that's important. I would say definitely going back to the question that you had, having accountability and ownership of the roles and results that they want. That's definitely when you know that you're actually getting the results that you want. And then I would also say, even when you're tracking those KPIs, if you know that, hey, whether it's every week or every day or every month, we are constantly achieving the results that we set out, then definitely also that you have a high performing team, because everybody ultimately is collaborating. Your deadlines are being met, or you are exceeding that, as far as getting that out. That is important. When you have low employee turnover, if turnover is good and everybody is engaged, then you know that, hey, we got a good high performing team. That's really good. And part of that, just guessing to say, employee engagement is good. That's not a guess game. That's really having conversations with your team to say, how are things going? Or doing some type of employee engagement survey where you can get candid, honest feedback from your employees to see if they are happy or what can be changed, because oftentimes they appreciate you just asking the question, of how are things going? Are you engaged? How is culture? How is morale? Asking for that feedback. And that way you'll know that you're getting the job satisfaction and if it's actually a positive work environment. And then also having when employees when you see that they thrive on growth, you really have high performance. When they want to learn more, learn about their career, learn about their skill, and they're asking more like, okay, I want to do better. What can I do better? When they're asking those type of questions, you have a high performing team because they want to get as good as they possibly can in their particular roles or outside, even go after other roles, possible. Hey, you've identified we have these needs. Okay, what can I do to be a great fit for that position? And so when they're constantly doing that, then you definitely have a good high performing team because they're trying to enhance their skills. And when they enhance their skills, guess what? They're enhancing the organization. That feeds into the results of the organization. It feeds into the bottom line as well.
Yeah. And, thinking about all of this, and this is really good. And I think that, of course, Black Business, we have a lot of people who are listening at the early stages, and we're really about how do we make sure that people know these things. But Lakeisha, honestly, when you're in those early days, I feel like a lot of, as I just mentioned, people don't focus on performance. They're just trying to get things done. So, of course, why do you feel that team performance is often overlooked, especially in those early stages of building a business, and we need to focus on it?
Honestly, because in the beginning, you are trying to get the bills paid. The fact about the performance, team performance is, and it's unfortunate, but it's just true, is that it's oftentimes it's an afterthought. You're trying to make sure that you can pay the bills or that you can pay the employees, that you recently hired. So you're really not thinking that, I really need to go back and look at, performance, because oftentimes you don't even realize that performance is an issue, until something happens, there's a fallout or there's a complaint, internally inside the team. You think that, everybody's going to work well together because I have this company. We all love what we do. But that doesn't mean that everybody works well together. Yeah. And that doesn't mean that, we have processes in place that where we can achieve this goal easily. That doesn't mean that the employees had a great experience with the customer, and that they may be upset about it. So in the beginning, you're just trying to really make sure that the company stays afloat because there's so many things coming at you. You're building a company. You're trying to make sure that you make payroll. You're trying to keep the lights on with the bills. And then on top of that, you want to grow. And so the business owner also may be looking at, here's an organization, that I need to be a part of, or here's a certification or something like that I need to achieve. And so you're looking every way, when honestly, that is one of the most important things that you really need to look at is, team performance, because the team performance impacts the bottom line. It impacts, honestly, the stability of the organization, whether you'll continue to grow and get clients. If the team is not solid and performing well, then it can definitely hurt the organization.
Yeah. And one of the things I love that you mentioned in the beginning on what makes a high performing team is that shared vision. So I want to dive into that just a little bit more on how can business owners create that one vision or that vision that truly motivates their team?
One is really clearly defining what that vision is. In the beginning, you just talked about startups and things like that. But in the beginning, sometimes it's just really that entrepreneur, that business owner that's creating the vision themselves. But as you continue to grow, having the team be a part of that, that's how you get buy-in, and how you can get them, to be involved and really understand what the vision is. And, that can be part of your strategic planning process. Like, hey, let's revisit our vision. What are we what are we trying to articulate inside of our vision? And having them being a part of the process, that gives buy-in, and then they're motivated because they really understand the vision. They understand the nuances behind achieving the vision. So when you have these company meetings, it's not just, they don't feel like it's just fluff. Oh, these are just words, that you're saying. They really understand because they were part of the process. And so that helps them relate to it. And honestly, they get attached to it. But one, being clear about it at some point, having them get the buy-in or having them participate in it. Then also, honestly, constantly communicating it to them, reminding them like, hey, this is the vision. This is what we're trying to achieve. Keep it, front and center. If you're in an organization, if you're in an office, have it posted around the office of what the vision is. Or if you're remote, put it in the team meetings on the agenda, send out messages about it. This is our vision. Just keep it top, front and center. So that way they understand. And then added to that with the different roles, explain to them that, hey, this is a part of how you add or contribute to our vision. Let them understand where that alignment is. Again, because it's all about them being involved and understanding the vision. And when they see that, that's important.
Yeah, I love that. And, speaking of roles, of course, you're trying to put people into their areas where they thrive best. So what are some of the strategies that can be used to ensure that team members are in the roles that align with their strengths and their skills?
Now, that's a good question, because honestly, a lot of times, especially in the beginning, the role alignment can be tough. But I will say taking a look at the business model and what you're trying to achieve can definitely help with role alignment, that you have the right roles that can really satisfy the vision that you want. And so look at I'll say, look at the business model and identify what roles are needed. So in your organization, depending on we're a human resources, an organization development organization, I know that I need one talent acquisition, people manager, customer support for our clients, payroll. At one time we did payroll. So understand your core competencies as well that are required inside of your business model, and then what roles attached to that. Now, keep in mind that oftentimes that this can change, as the company grows, and I can attest to that, because at one time we did payroll. Well, guess what? We no longer do payroll, only for our grandfather clients, but it's not a new service that we offer. And so that particular role has evolved into a hybrid role. Because we're more focused, on the organizational planning side of things versus, payroll. But really understanding, that model and the needs will really give you a heads up on what you want. And you want to make sure that you are being very efficient. One of the things that I always encourage, entrepreneurs, business owners to really look at is when you are doing this, also to make sure, especially in the beginning, that you're not going in and just hiring for every, I have this, I need to hire a person. Try to be as efficient as possible, because you will, in the beginning, the truth of it is that you're going to have dual roles. You're not going to have just, depending on what your budget is, you may not have the funding to have one person just for every role, because you may not have enough business for that. So look at what is going to be more operationally efficient, for your organizations. And then just make sure that, you can adapt accordingly and grow and scale from that. Yeah.
And that's a great point, because a lot of people think that, like you mentioned, you don't need everything. You don't need all the roles, but outsourcing versus hiring in-house. So when you're building that team, how can they decide when to outsource a role versus hiring in-house?
So outsourcing versus internal. So it really depends, honestly, on what the function is. And I like to say, if it's not one of the core competencies or functions of your organization, outsource it. Because one, you're going to spend a lot of time on trying to learn something that is just not your niche, it's not your realm of expert. And why go through all of that when you really want to be the best at what your core competencies are, for the services or products that you offer. And so if it's not the case, then definitely outsource it, because one, you'll pay 9 times out of 10, you're going to pay less than what you would pay to hire a person for that role. And then depending on the company that you outsource with, you're not only just going to get one person, but you'll get a team. And you'll get, their team, whether they have, attorneys, what have you, get all type of resources and support on top of that. Because also think about it, if you had to hire someone and that's not your expertise, well, guess what? Who's going to lead and guide that person in that particular service? And I'll just give an example like human resources, why a lot of organizations do they outsource to us because that's not their niche. And they honestly, this is, what they tell us. They don't want to have to spend time on trying to train and develop someone in human resources when they don't even understand it themselves. And so if they can outsource and know, hey, I know that liability wise, we're going to be good. We're going to be compliant. I have a team that's working behind me. We can do that. Same for us, from a finance standpoint, finance and accounting, we outsource our services because that is not something that is our realm of expertise. And honestly, I don't want it to be our realm of expertise. So, I go to the experts and let the experts handle it. And I am involved, and you have to do your checks and balances to make sure that things are going well. And I do that. But hey, I'm going to leave, what I don't know. I'm going to hire that out. Now, to go back to your question about when to hire internally for it, and that does come, honestly, with growth, because at some point, I will say that depending on the type of business that you have, there may come a time where, hey, we're growing so fast, we need constant expertise internal. Like I need to be able to, whenever walk down the hall, and talk so we can discuss the strategy, we can get it, in place, but that's going to be on the growth of the organization. So there's never a time you say, oh, well, okay, when you get to 50 employees, when you get to 100, when you can get to 200 employees. It really depends on the growth and where the organization is on whether or not they need to, when it's time to hire internal. But I will say that at some point there will become a time, when you will need to hire a service internally, so that way you can have them. It's in the best interest and the best liability for the company to have someone in a seat as an employee to be able to advise and guide.
Yeah. Certainly. Definitely agree on that. And now I want to shift gears into communication, collaboration, and accountability. So, of course, when you're dealing with a high performing team, everyone has different personalities, ways of communication. So I want to talk about some strategies for creating that culture of open communication that does foster that trust that you talked about earlier and some of that transparency.
So one way to do that is being open, to the trust and transparency is one, being open to problem solving. Oftentimes, when employees, when they kind of shut down and you don't see the collaboration, you don't see the trust, is when they provide solutions or offer solutions or opinions and it's not accepted, it's not wanted. They're constantly, well, no, that's not the way we do it. That's not the way we've done it. And so we're not going to do it. If it's not broke, don't fix it. When in our actuality, it may not be broken, but there may be a better way. It may be a smarter way. It may be an easier way. And so that sometimes can stifle, a person from really being a part of that team, being a high performing member of that team, when they feel like, hey, when I try to offer feedback or what have you, it's not there. So being open and communicating to your employees to let them know, hey, we accept your feedback. We want your feedback. We want you to problem solve. You are a part of this team. We value you. When they see that, they know that, and you practice that, there's action and feet behind that. That definitely helps. And that allows the organization to grow as well, because you definitely don't want to just live in the past and then not be open to innovation ultimately. So definitely I would say the problem solving. One of the other ways I would say, so problem solving, having the open, feedback. And then of course you should always still take time out to be team focused, team centered. One of the things that I think are always great are like team retreats. We're actually having our annual team retreat next week. And so this is an opportunity. Yes. Yes, we're having it next week. And so that is an opportunity for you to get away from the office, get away from that particular environment and really focus on the team collaboration. What are our team dynamics? Have trust building activities, where you can have just communication about the team of and you want to keep it lighthearted around the business. That could definitely, have business aspect to it. But the purpose of it is to foster collaboration inside of the team. That's the purpose of it. And that's what you want. So team retreats is an important aspect of that, because they get an opportunity to maybe, and depending on, the organization, how it's structured, to really meet and spend time with some team members that they're not in the office with, or for those that work remotely that they don't, they've never even probably seen before at some point. So team retreats are a great way to have that team positive reinforcement around team collaboration.
Yeah, I love that. Lakeisha, of course, when you're in the early stages of business, you're thinking, this is my baby. I got to take care of it. I got to hold it close to my chest. And with that, for a lot of people as leaders, they deal with feeling like they're micromanaging, or their team feels like they're micromanaging. So how can a leader implement systems of accountability without micromanaging?
That's a good question, because that does happen at times. And fostering accountability is making sure that you do quality assurance checks, and not on a micromanager level, but if you have, let's just say, weekly check-ins, that's an opportunity to do that. One is make sure that you have, that you're clear on what the expectations are, from you. Hey, this is the project. This is what we're trying to achieve. Have the employee give you some feedback, on how they plan to achieve that. Or if you already have a process in place, discuss what that looks like. And then make sure you follow up. Following up is important because it gives you that quality check where you can go back, they can give you an update. And when you meet with them, allow them to lead. So that way you're not micromanaging, show me every step. Have them, tell you, hey, we're gonna have the next check-in on this particular Friday. This is what the agenda is. This is what we're gonna talk. This is what we're gonna talk about. I'm gonna update you on. So that way, that they're coming in. So that way, also, you have an opportunity when you look at the agenda, if that particular project or assignment, what have you, is not on that agenda, you can tell them, hey, I don't see this on here. Let's discuss. Give me an update on this so I can know what's going on. If we need to, course correct or what have you. But not micromanaging is important, because especially if you're micromanaging high performers, that is one of the biggest demotivators for a high performer, because they know their job. They like their job. They're excited about it. They know that they do it well. But to have somebody that's constantly micromanaging them, that actually hurts a high performing employee. Save the micromanaging for those employees that are not performing well. And that's a whole nother subject right there on what you would have to do for your low performers on developing and trying to get them what they need. But high performers, you definitely should not micromanage. Just do your check-ins and allow them to update you on what's going on. And in that way, you have an idea of what it is. If you need to provide feedback, you can provide feedback at that point. But and you feel confident that it's happening. Another way is having some type of project management system where they can go in and you can see the updates. So for us, we have project management system. All of our projects are in there. And at any given time, I can go and look and I can see what is the status of a project. There are notes that are updated, the documents that have been created, status checks. That information is readily available. And if you decide to go that way, then you need to make it a requirement that your team actually goes in and they provide the status updates, so that way you can see them in real time of what's going on. And this removes the ultimately micromanaging, having to meet every day, all day, or, constant several times a week, because you can see what's going on in the project management system.
Yes, I love that advice. And one of the things because I want to shift gears a bit in all of this, there will be challenges within the team. So I want to shift gears to what you just mentioned is, how do you deal with those who are underperforming? So how can business owners approach and manage underperforming team members while also trying to keep that high morale?
So definitely going back to that accountability. And honestly, everybody should be held accountable. In particular to the low performers, is starting out with having a conversation about it, asking them what's going on, why you're not seeing the output that you need. Because sometimes it's not, it may not be work related. There may be things that are going on at home, in their personal lives that are affecting it. And not that you want to pry into that, but asking them, what is going on, letting them know up front that you're not seeing the results that they once had, or that is required of that job. And so have a conversation from them on what's going on, have a plan, to correct it, hold them accountable to that plan. And then you definitely have to do your check-ins. If you do not see the success or the improvement, then then you need to have a conversation of whether or not it may be the best role for them, because maybe they're not in the right role. Oftentimes that happens, they may be better fit in another role. And I've had that happen as well. When an employee, you have the conversation and really they're more motivated and passionate about another role, and you find out that they do that role really well. So it may be the role alignment that may not be it, or they may not be a good fit for the company, but allow them an opportunity for improvement. But you have to do those check-ins. You have to follow up, make sure that you hold them accountable of the outcomes, that are required and expected of them. And if you see that it's not a good fit, then, it may not be a good fit for the organization. And that's a totally different conversation.
Yeah. And speaking of good fit, for a lot of people, they might face those challenges of having a high turnover rate. So what advice do you have for handling that, particularly in those early stages of business?
One is to tackle, if you start seeing exits from your employees, have conversations, especially with them before, do an exit interview and ask them during those exit interviews how you can improve. Ask them about their role, what they liked about it, what didn't they like about it. Ask them about how you can improve as an organization. Have the conversation with them, because they're leaving, and so most are willing to offer some type of feedback on what can help the organization improve. So one, do that, but then also with the ones that are there before you even start seeing the turnover, because you don't want to get there, do stay interviews. Ask your employees why they are staying, because that tells you what you are doing well, and then you want to multiply that. Because if they're saying, hey, I stay here because I love this about the organization, that ultimately you care, or the flexibility of the organization, or, my role, I love this. Get that feedback, conduct the stay interviews, and then double down on that and continue to do that more. So that way you won't see, the turnover as a reason. Now, there's so many the reasons that turnover can be, and it may not be the organization's fault. It may be, salary. And sometimes those are things that it's hard for you to try to compete against, especially with a large organization if you're a small organization. But then with cases like that, see if you can get creative and offer maybe benefits, maybe unlimited paid time off or something like that, or adjust the hours or, the work location. Try to get creative, but try to get ahead of it. Try to get ahead of it before, so that way you can nip it in the bud.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's another thing, like dealing with trying to keep that high retention during this competitive job market, or even as entrepreneurs are facing those challenging times. So yeah, I would, if you would like to talk about that, because I'm pretty sure people are like, okay, how can we keep this high retention? There's a competitive job market. As you mentioned, we're dealing with a lot of small business owners. And then also there might be those challenging times. So how do you get through that?
Yeah. So just like, during the time when there was, COVID and the challenging times, and for some, honestly, it still is right now. But trying to get through that, really, honestly, you have to get creative. You really have to get creative on what you offer, to your team, the work environment of your team, boosting morale, reassessing culture, because COVID shocked a lot of people, and what the expectations were. And so it may take some adjusting of, your expectations, if you would, inside of your organization. Not that you would reduce expectations, but just how you go about achieving the expectations that you have. So I really boil it down to getting creative and then communicating with your team, asking them what do they want, ultimately what will make them happy, and things like that. And informing them that we won't be able to fix or do everything, but we're definitely open to suggestions, and making sure when you get that feedback, you go back and you tell them, hey, these are things that we can implement. These are things that we can't. And here is why. Because that's where the missing piece is. Oftentimes organizations will do employee engagement surveys and they get a ton of feedback, but then they don't do anything with it, or they may do it, but they need to tell them, hey, this is aligned directly to the employee engagement survey. This is why we're making the changes based on your feedback. We appreciate it. And so here's what we're going to do. But then also here's what we're not going to do, but this is the reason why. And if you don't explain why, because I've gotten feedback, sometimes that explaining why, may be tough, it puts the organization in a bad position, but just giving them some type of information, and it doesn't have to be fully everything, but giving them some type of feedback on why you can't make the changes, they can process a bit more. And then they understand, okay, this is why. And I appreciate, the feedback. They value that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And speaking of feedback, one of the things I love that you talk about earlier is that team retreat, and also other ways of increasing morale is like recognition. So what are some ways that business owners can provide the meaningful recognition that actually motivates their team?
Yeah. So some ways of providing that recognition, one is social media. If the company has a social media page, I encourage them to recognize their team members on social media. Employees like to see when you are publicly acknowledging the work that they've done. They appreciate it. They feel valued. And then there's no cost to the business to do that. It's not an ad that you have to boost. It's something that you put on your page, and then, people share out, and then they start contacting the employees. So definitely social media is a way to do that. Also acknowledging them in front of their colleagues. One of the long-lasting appreciation from a survey that was done years ago was intrinsic versus extrinsic. A lot of people think when you talk about appreciation and recognition that employees value monetary gifts. But when this was done, and it's proven over time, yes, people enjoy the monetary compensation, but that's extrinsic. And 2 or 3 months later, they're like, okay, when am I going to get when I'm going to get the raise, or when I'm going to get the next incentive? Whereas when it's intrinsic, they value more, it's long lasting, because they truly appreciate, where you acknowledge them, or you gave them a heartfelt thank you. I appreciate so much what you did, communicating that to them. And they love it when it's in front of other employees. So if you did it at a staff meeting or at the team retreat, and you said, hey, I just want to thank such and such, for a job well done that they did. They've been going above and beyond, all of this. They appreciate that. They value that, versus doing it behind closed doors. Doing it in front of everyone, that's helpful, and they definitely appreciate it. So that's another way, that you can do it in front of others. If you have some type of not incentive plan, but recognition, program where you are have an employee of the month. There's also, which I love, is if you had when we talk about like maybe employee of the month or employee of the year, and having that family member, you getting with them, the company, getting with the family and putting together a video of that employee, and from their childhood to their family, telling them congratulations, job well done, and it's all a surprise. So that when you do have this team meeting or this retreat or annual meeting, whatever it is, you play that video. And we have recommended that, and I've seen the tears run down the employees' eyes, because they had no idea that this was going on. And sometimes the family members are there. They, sneak in while the video is there, so that when it's finished playing, they can see them there. And so they appreciate all of the thought, that went behind that particular video, just to show them that, hey, we appreciate you. We value you. And so that's one of the top ways as well.
That's an amazing idea. I love that. And I love the fact that, because most times, like you mentioned, people are thinking about monetary things. So those are all great. Thank you.
Yes. You're welcome.
And so the other thing is, with a high performing team, there are always people who are always learning. So I want to talk about how entrepreneurs can promote continuous learning and professional development within their teams, even if they're dealing with a limited budget.
Yeah. So one way to do it is, if they have a limited budget, is that the leader of the organization can provide, let's just say, lunch and learns. If you have a limited budget, it may take more work for that business owner or entrepreneur, but it's still offering continuous learning and continuous improvement for those team members, for them to say, hey, every Wednesday, we are going to talk about, whatever the topic may be. So that way there can be continuous learning and discussion about something that's important in their industry. And it offers the employees an opportunity to grow, ask questions, and so they can get better at their job. Another way is to allow other leaders or other employees, hey, you have to study this particular topic, and then you're going to lead a session on it. And so that way, everybody, it breeds a collaborative environment, because everybody is responsible for leading a session on some topic that, that may be the new improved, whether it's a trend or maybe it's a best practice or a standard that has come out. And so they have to do the research on it, and give that information to them. So that's one way where limited funding, but everybody is contributing and they appreciate it. They know that, hey, I researched this. And if they have questions, I can go to this particular team member and they can provide support and feedback on me on, what we need to do to implement these chances or enhance this inside of our organization. Another way also is whatever that particular industry is to subscribe to maybe a team subscription or something for that, to an association. So that way they can get updates, newsletters, resources for continuous learning. A lot of times with different associations, there's webinars that they do on a monthly basis. And so employees can participate in those particular webinars. And then also is to every year is to really put in the budget to have some type of continuous learning budget. And whether this is, $200, $300, $400, $500 or $1,000, whatever that may be, just look at a typical, at least workshop or webinar to see what that amount is and put that in the budget. You can have every employee, let them know that, hey, we have a PD budget and every employee will be offered a PD stipend on a workshop or conference of their choice. It just has to align with their particular role. As long as it aligns with your role or, the career trajectory, that you want to go down, then they can actually take that. And then another way to look at it is also, speaking of career trajectories, is really taking time to really understand what is the employees, what is that team member, what is their career trajectory? What are they looking to achieve? What is their ultimate goal? And so how can you support them in getting there? Will you have opportunity inside the company to get there? Can they shadow another employee? Can they work in another department, on a monthly basis just to get experience until an opening comes or until they're ready, to be promoted or moved or transition into another role? That's still continuous learning because you have some employees, honestly, that get burnt out. They've done it for so long. They're looking for something new. And then instead of them going and find something new with another organization, this person has systemic knowledge, of your business. Why not allow them to go and learn another role in your organization? They can add even more value, there. And then they can be happy, that they're happy there as well, too. So afford them that opportunity to do that.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that was a ton of great ways. And it's like, you can't say there aren't ways to make this work. So, yeah. And Lakeisha, this has been phenomenal. So speaking of continuous learning, I want to talk about some of the work that you're doing and some of that continued support for our listeners. So if you could just share a little bit more about your expertise at Chief of Minds and your services and how you can assist these listeners who are struggling with building or managing their teams.
Absolutely. So at Chief of Minds, we enhance organizations by offering leadership, training and development courses, whether these be in person that we do them live, we do workshops, we do retreats, we do it virtual, and a lot of topics, I shouldn't say any topic, but a lot of the topics that can enhance your organization, we provide. So from leadership development to performance management, change management, customer service workshops as well. We are all focused on enhancing the organization. So we provide training and development. We provide workforce planning and management as well. For some, we also serve as outsourced HR or fractional HR, as some people like to call it, for organizations that may not have a human resources department. We serve as their department, HR department, by making sure that compliant, reduce liability. And that's everything from the onboarding to the termination or exiting of an employee. We also provide strategic planning. And then on the government solution side, we provide program management, staff augmentation. And that's with the staff augmentation and staffing recruitment. We do that for the private sector as well. And then acquisition services also.
And so what I love the work that you are doing. And one of the things is for people who are listening, who might be trying to figure it all out on their own, what would you say is the benefits of seeking that professional help and HR services like that Chief of Mind provides, as opposed to just trying to do it all themselves?
Is one, it alleviates time to really focus on what you do best, what the organization, what are their core competencies, so that way they can drive and increase their revenue, productivity, and profitability when they have an organization where that is their expertise. Like Chief of Minds, we come in and we handle all of that for them. And so We drive on the other end, they increase it, and we help them drive that increase by providing those services, whether it is the human resources, because they don't have to focus on them. They know that they're compliant. They know that there's reduced risk and liability, and they don't have to train and develop someone for it. They also have the guidance and advisement from an expert team, not just one person, but from an expert team. And then with all of the other, services that we provide, because those are all about the productivity and the change and performance management, which impacts not only the organization as a whole, but of course the individual employees as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so good. And so people are wondering, okay, how can we connect with you? How can we work with you? And so if you could share a little bit about how your onboarding process is and what that looks like.
Yes. So the first step would be contacting us, which is they can contact us via email at service@chiefofminds.com. And that's service@chiefofminds.com would be one of the ways. And so filling out that form, going to contact and filling out that form. And so we would have a consultation call to really understand what the needs are. Mm-hmm. And then from there, then we make a recommendation on what we see as would be a solution, the right fit for the services or the needs that they have. And so from there, we provide a quote. And then once we agreed upon that. And then, we start our onboarding process, which includes a kickoff call. And then, from there, we start the service delivery process.
Beautiful. And I love it. And so, Lakeisha, one of the things before we head out, you mentioned earlier, which I think is so great, is you are now celebrating over 10 years in business. And I want to talk about what that feels like and what is your 10, what do you think contributed to you getting to 10 years in business successfully?
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
It is definitely exciting. I would say the first thing that contributed to my 10 years was honestly my faith in God, because there's been many trials and tribulations. Entrepreneurship is not, just a steady growth line. And so staying prayed up and praying about the decisions that I've made for my organization first before reacting has definitely helped. The number two is really say also a lot of self-reflection on the decisions that I've made, because I've learned from different mistakes, that I've made. And so I've had to have self-reflection and really learn that not pointing the finger all the time, that, hey, what could I have done better in this particular situation? The third is understanding that my organization cannot be everything to everybody. In the beginning, anything that someone asked us to do, well, do you do this? I'm like, oh yeah, we can do it. We can take care of that. And it wasn't, and it's not that I didn't know how to do it and teach and train our employees how to do it. It's just that it wasn't a good use of our time. We had other things that was our core focus for us to really focus on and deliver that versus trying to train other people on how to do this. So really understanding our business model and what we do best and executing that. Once I learned that, things got to happen, very well. And then from there, I would say really understanding the difference between growth and scaling and what it takes to grow and then what it takes to scale, and understanding that growth happens before scaling. You have to put the work in for growth to happen. And it's not easy, but once you've put that in and the right, systems, processes, people, tools in place, then it sets the foundation for the scale to happen.
That's good. That's a breakthrough for somebody, especially about trying to take on things that aren't in alignment. So a lot of people can relate to that, especially in those earlier days. And one of the things you mentioned is like learning from mistakes. And I'm curious to know, in 10 years, like what has been one of those most memorable risks and the best risk that you've taken?
Let's see. That's a good question. Memorable risk and best risk. So the best risk is probably the most memorable and best risk was purchasing my office building. Back in 2021, it was a major risk. It was definitely a major risk. But I made the decision. I was leasing my office, had been for 7 years. Well, it was one of them. I had several that I had been leasing from. And so I made the decision that this would be a great business move, because some of the offices I could also lease out as well. And so that would help, with margins. So it really was an investment that I made, but it is definitely the most memorable and the most riskiest, because it's something that on a business side, I had never made a large purchase like that, large real estate purchase, like that for the business. And so to invest in that was real risky, but it has definitely paid off. And I'm glad I did.
That is amazing. And that is so inspiring. Congratulations. That's a big deal. Yeah. And we have a lot of early stage entrepreneurs on the podcast. So what advice would you give to someone who's in their first year of business?
I would say in your first year of business, definitely while you are starting up your business, to establish systems. It is so important to get those systems together, and processes, and not just systems, but processes more importantly. So that way you don't have to go back and rework what you did. And then you also have something, as you bring more and more team members on, you have a process in place. So you don't have to hands-on, constantly showing them, come sit here and watch me do this. You have a process, A to Z, this is how we do this, and they can take that and duplicate that. And now it doesn't have to be written. You can, record your screen or get Trainual or something like that. And you can have all of this documented, where they can actually, see it ultimately and practice it in real time. So having your systems and processes in place is important. And then also hiring good people, good quality people, taking time to really interview and research your candidates before you hire them, because this is, at the end of the day, this is your baby. And so you want to be confident in who you hire, and making sure that they're the right fit for your organization. And then I would say thirdly, to that point, is to always understand that it's a compliment when your team grows. And sometimes, they may don't take it personal when they may get other, larger opportunities, that may come their way. It's just a reflection upon you and the great work that you did. So that's the advice.
Perfect advice. And my final question is, what does it mean to you to be Black in business?
It means excellence. Black is excellence. Black in business for me means confirmation from the lineage that I come from. My grandmother, my grandfathers, my great uncles were entrepreneurs. And for me, it means that I am carrying on that torch of the excellence that we've had. And I just want to continue to pray to deliver that excellence and leave this legacy for my kids.
Beautifully said. Lakeisha, this has been amazing having you on the show. And also, before we hop off, I want to, if you could share again, how can people stay connected with you, find you, and support you?
Absolutely. So you can connect with me on LinkedIn. It's Lakeisha Robichaux all together on LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest and best way to find me. You can visit our website at www.chiefofminds.com. You can also, if interested, back in, I think it was 2021, 2022, I published a book called Growing Beyond the CEO, especially since the audience is startups. Yeah. This is definitely a book as you start to hire and bring on team members. It is a book that you can reference on what are the steps? What do I need to do? How do I need to bring on, employees? I highly recommend that you get it. You can find it on Amazon, and it's called Growing Beyond the CEO. Also, you can email us at service@chiefofminds.com, and you can find Chief of Minds on Instagram and Facebook as well.
Perfect. And I will be sure to put the book link in the show notes. And this has been beautiful. And thank you again for being on the show and the work that you are doing, Lakeisha.
Thank you so much. It's been my pleasure. I appreciate you having me.
And that is a wrap for today's episode. We cover a lot of strategies with Lakeisha on how to build a high-performing team, from aligning your team with their vision to fostering accountability and improving communication. I felt like that was one of those masterclass episodes for sure. So whether you have a team or you're preparing to build one, these strategies will help you to create a strong foundation for growth. So I want to thank you so much for being a part of the Black to Business family. Remember, we are all about pushing the culture forward. So let's continue to elevate and support one another as we build these thriving businesses. And for more information on Lakeisha and Chief of Minds, head over to blacktobusiness.com/222. As always, I appreciate you for tuning in, and make sure you join us again next week, same time, same place. Later.